Welcome to Teacher in Zion Podcast. So this is Doug Hatton, Teacher in Zion Podcast, and I have with me today Trisha. Trisha, I think you're somewhere Arizona or something right now. You're traveling,
Yep.
right? All
Yep.
right, and I appreciate you taking time out from your family and all the goings on and to talk with me today. We've been talking back and forth. You and your husband and me have been talking for a little while now, and I've been wanting to get you on the show. So, hey, tell me a little bit about your upbringing. You are now. Are you a member of the Utah Latter-day Saint Church at this moment, or
Yes, I'm
okay?
currently a member. I grew up LDS. It's just kind of true blue Mormon, I guess you can say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, definitely the church has been our life. Up in, I don't know, 40 something years old, and it's been my entire life. So,
Yeah, I mean, most LDS people I know are pretty devoted, really. It's a way
yeah,
of life, right? It's a whole different, it's
yeah,
a whole culture. It's not just a church you go to on Sunday.
right.
So,
It's a culture. It's a culture. I didn't actually realize that and until just recently, but yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
And I don't think that's a bad thing either. I think that can be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. It could, if depend on the circumstance, but I think ultimately, I mean, if you're talking about Zion, I mean, you really want to just, Zion is not about, well, we go to this church on Sunday and that's it. And other than that, we don't really associate. I mean, we want to be a people, right? And so that's a
Yeah,
good thing. I see it as a good thing for the most part, or can be, but definitely can
yeah,
bring some other pressures to bear if things aren't the way they need to be. But so
right,
tell me a little
right.
bit about your family and your whole upbringing in the church and what it was like, because I wasn't raised in the LDS. I was raised in the RLDS, a little bit different experience.
Okay,
So I'm
okay,
interested in hearing a little bit about that.
okay. So, I'm the oldest of 7 children. And our family moved around a lot. And, so the church was a big part of us, just settling in everywhere we went. Just we always had the same church groups to go to and same youth groups and things like that. And the church helped us a lot when I was growing
Okay.
up. They helped us with, our financially or, just with my, siblings and things.
Hmm.
But then, so I got married in the temple, met my husband at BYU,
Okay.
and he went on a mission, and I was still 19. I was pretty young, and
Yeah.
and then we just, his career was military, so we started just moving around everywhere, and I felt like the church was a huge blessing to us because everywhere we went, we had a group of people like
Yeah.
automatically that we could, you know, associate with, and just everyone was welcoming, and just your family, instant family. And I didn't have family because we were moving everywhere, and so the church was really our family.
Yeah.
And the
A
church had,
support system, right? Just it's kind of
yeah,
an emotional
definitely.
support system. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, definitely. And my husband, he grew up in the church, but his parents didn't go, and so he was practically raised, by the church.
Hmm.
So it was just our
Okay.
lives. So yeah, and then I ended up having 7 children as well. My oldest just went on a mission 2 years. 2 years. He just got home from his mission about 2 years ago, and
Okay.
my youngest is 3. So we've got the whole spectrum there.
Okay. And you never went on a mission
No, I didn't.
yourself. Okay.
Nope.
Now I get a lot of now. I always invite the missionaries in every time they come to the door. I'm always like very welcoming. I've
Yeah.
seen I don't know how many pairs I've gone through, but lately it's mostly been women. which is, I
Yeah, there's
remember the
so
first time I
many.
ever had,
Yeah.
the first time I had two female missionaries come, it shocked me. That was some years ago. I was like, what is going on here? But now it's almost like I see more of them than I do the men. I thought that was interesting, but
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. I mean, we did have missionaries in our home all the time. Like when I was a kid, and even me and my husband, we would have them over all the time. I
okay.
really felt like when my son was out on a mission, I wanted him to be taken care of. So I would really
Hmm.
try to take care of all of the missionaries that I could.
Yeah. So is it common for in LDS culture for kids to do they have their own schools at all, or are they homeschooled more often than not, or they go to public schools generally, or is it
I
just
feel like it's getting more popular to homeschool, but it's still very common to go to public school. I've
mhm.
homeschooled my kids, and it's been not normal in the groups that we've been in. I've There's
Okay?
been a lot of places, we've lived in, we were the only ones homeschooling.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it seems to be a very popular option for RLDS or ex RLDS restoration people on our end. It's more and more,
Yeah,
just because
yeah,
people are uh, not real keen on some of the things that are happening in public schools and so forth. But
yeah,
yeah, but
for
that
sure.
can't be easy though. I can't imagine. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of positives, of course, to the church experience. I had a lot of positives in the RLDS. There's a lot of good positive things about having a culture, especially a strong support system and all that. And but of
Mhm.
course, at some point, I'm guessing there were some aspects of at least the religion or doctrines and so forth. There's something probably got your attention
Yes,
initially
definitely.
that made you
Definitely.
question some aspect. Do you want to? What was that? Was that the polygamy
So,
question or?
well, polygamy has definitely been on my mind like my whole life. I never felt good about it. I didn't like it. My dad would kind of bring it up, and it would just really, it was hurtful almost. And it's like, I didn't understand why I was, hurt by the idea of it. If
Yeah.
I knew I didn't have to do that, but it still was. And especially, my siblings too, as my sister, it affected her a lot too. But I always just knew that there wasn't, that I really just didn't like it. So I kind of distanced myself from Joseph Smith. I didn't want to know about him. I
Yeah.
just ignored it. And and when I went to seminary as a kid, DNC, I was just like, I don't want to learn about the DNC. I don't want to read it. I didn't want anything to do with it. And so I pretty much stopped going at that year.
Okay. Yeah, and of course, in the RLDS, we were always raised in our tradition that what Joseph Smith had nothing to do with polygamy and all that, and Brigham Young blamed it. And so, I was raised in a different culture, so we didn't have that stigma attached. But just as disclaimer, I mean, officially, the church LDS
Yeah.
officially does not endorse the practice of polygamy,
Right.
but it is in your doctrine, right?
Right.
Written in one of your books of Revelation,
Yep.
and has been assigned the authorship of Joseph Smith, supposedly.
Yep.
And so I can only imagine this because I was raised in very conservative part of the Restoration RLDS culture, and one of the reasons why we came out of RLDS is because of that. And I guess you could call us the fundamentalists. Fundamentalist has a very different connotation in LDS culture. It tends to be
Yeah.
polygamous. And
Yeah.
I realized that makes sense because I realized what it is a fundamentalist is someone who says, well, we don't care what men say. We're going to go by the scriptures, and that's the right way of doing it, right? And so if in your
Yeah.
scriptures you have polygamy and saying
Yep.
that God has chosen this for his people, why are we not doing it? So I got to wonder, is that why you would hear about it? Is because people would speculate, share opinions about whether we should or shouldn't, or ultimately we should go back to it, or something like that, or
I mean,
what?
it's in the culture. Like it comes up in seminary because everybody wants to know about it. So the kids talk about it, they ask questions, and I think it's an assigned topic that like they have their spiel, what they have to say about it. And so it's definitely there.
Okay.
And then, especially because of the temple, because when you go to the temple, you're always worried that if you pass away, then your husband will marry another woman, and then you'll be sealed to him and to her at the same time.
Oh, so
And
in
so,
eternity, you might be in a
yes,
polygamous relationship, whether you were on Earth or not.
yes. And so that's
Okay.
a fear for a lot of young women. They're like, I don't want that. And then the men, they're like, well, I get to have more than one wife when I'm in heaven. That's kind of a thing. Like my daughter in college was in a religion class last year, and they were talking about this, and the boys are just like, they use it, they just, oh yeah, this is gonna, this is great, this is what we get to look forward to, and the girls are just like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
I
So
mean, we laugh, but also I know there's a very painful aspect to just
yeah,
even the idea of this. I
yeah.
mean, how does it make you feel? Just the idea of that before you
Well,
knew
I
whether it was of
saw,
God or not.
yeah. So I saw my friend post about it a few years ago, and she had a book that she read, and it was something like, I think it was called The Ghost of Polygamy, or
Okay.
of Eternal Polygamy, or something like that. And I was like, I never read the book because I felt like I couldn't, it wasn't church approved, and I didn't know if I was going into, iffy territory. So I just didn't read it. But that book sat on my desk, and I just looked at the title, and I was like, it is so true. Just that title, the ghost of eternal polygamy, like it is constantly in the back of your mind. It makes you
Yeah.
feel like you're not important, like you're not special, you're not, it takes away from the relationship that you have. And even if it, like my husband, we talked about it, and I probably would have never married somebody who even considered that, because it was so touchy for me.
Yeah.
So I just, he was fine. And even though I knew he was fine, it still affected me.
That's a good title because it is. I guess it's haunting you. The doctrine is
Yes.
haunting you,
Yes.
and and I
Yeah.
I guess looking back, hindsight is 2020. But you got to wonder if it's something from the Lord. Then should it not bring peace and comfort and joy when you meditate on it? And yet there it is,
Yeah.
just haunting you. It's
Yeah.
frightening. Yeah, kind of a sign, I guess. Here's your sign. The
Yeah.
Lord would.
Yeah. Speaking of signs, I had so since I feel like since it was such a big deal for me, God was showing me, and it took a few years, but he was showing me like, I'm not okay with this. So I don't know if you've seen like the Sister Wives show on TV. I
Yeah,
watched that from beginning to end because I
yeah.
wanted
My
to
wife
know,
loved
like,
it.
yeah. I mean, actually, one of the girls in that, one of the wives I was friends with in when I was 12, in church. She was part of our church. And
Wow.
I don't even know if she remembers me, but it just caught my attention. And then one of the other wives lived in one of the houses that my grandma ended up living in Bountiful. And so I just had all these little connections. And so I was just like, okay, I'm going to watch this show and see, like, I was just fascinated, like, not in a, like, I
Yeah.
want this kind of way, but like, how come you want this? Like, how can you think this is right? And so, I mean, they just
Yeah.
had one of their last seasons, and I think the whole family's like broken up, and he's with the last wife, and everyone else has left, and it's crazy.
That's what I heard. My wife was
Yeah,
fascinated by it. We were watching it for a while. I don't think we've seen the last two seasons or whatever, but
yeah,
it's kind of funny. Is it's an interesting thing even for people who completely think that's a horrible thing, but it's people are intrigued. They have to watch it
yeah.
because it's so
So,
unique. It's a
yeah,
completely different idea. This not
yeah,
something that normal Americans would ever even imagine or think about. So to see something like that on TV, it's got to be
yeah,
interesting. For
yeah.
me, I kept turning to my wife and saying that guy is a scoundrel.
Hmm.
I kept telling her this is all about. I said all of this. She was like, "Well, at least they got this support system. The women they got these nice." I said, "Yeah, but this guy is on an ego trip. This is nothing
Hmm.
but an ego trip." As a man, I'm going. This is some huge ego trip of his, And and also I knew he was doomed because all these women are they're gonna gang up on him eventually,
Yeah, yeah.
which kind of happened. But
I think he said at the end, like, I don't believe in polygamy anymore, or like, I'm not doing
yeah,
this anymore, or something like that. But it
it doesn't
also
work.
no, no. And I saw like the FLDS too. And I was just thinking, because they had the show of the Warren Jeffs and all of that.
Yeah,
And so I was watching when all that happened, when they came in and, took the kids and all of that
yeah,
was going down on the news. I was just thinking, if they knew that Joseph Smith was not the founder of this, they would be set
yeah.
free. And it breaks my heart because I just look at them and they're not happy and there's so much abuse. And like, that was my mission. I'm like, I just want to share like what I know about Joseph Smith because I feel like it would set so many people free.
Yeah, definitely. And so you kind of let the cat out of the bag here. You definitely came to the point where you
Yeah.
knew it wasn't just a gut feeling or an easiness about it or the fact you just didn't like it because,
Yeah.
we could all say, well, we don't like something because we just don't understand it or whatever.
Yeah.
But you came
Yeah.
to an actual point where you realized this is not from the Lord.
Right.
Tell me how you came to that. What was
Yeah,
that
I guess I
journey
did
like?
jump forward. Sorry.
No, you're
So
good.
well, I had another experience where I was at a home show with my dad, and there was a guy selling meat from his farm, and his wife was right there with all their kids, and I was just by myself. And I'm married and have 6 kids at this point, but he didn't know that because I was just with my dad, and he was basically asking me to be one of his wives right in front of his other wife. And I was thinking, I was wondering if they were all that way. Like, I was just wondering, are they always just looking for the next girl, And then that experience happened and I was like, well, that was an answer, And
Yeah, I mean,
so,
as a guy, I'm just going to admit because I'm going to, on behalf of all men, I'm going to rat us out, and I know what men are like. I mean, I know the natural man, and that he's not sitting there, and the Holy Spirit is directing him like, this is your next wife.
yeah,
Here's what I want for you. Here's what I, God, want for you. That didn't happen
yeah,
because the Holy
no,
Spirit knew that you were married, right? So what it's all about is lust. I mean, that is a
yeah,
lust response. And
hmm
I'm not going to say all people are that way, but I'm saying that clearly is, he's just looking for, I'm getting bored of the other ones, so I need a new excitement in my life. This is polygamy is just like some sort of wild fantasy of men's that's gone way
yeah,
out of control in my estimation. But
hmm
here it
yeah,
is, a part of our religion. It's a part of the religion that got in there, and so this is a
yeah,
very serious matter. It's not just some fringe group. It's actually
yeah,
a part of built into the history of the church. So we have to deal with that on some level.
right.
So
So my cousin was, well, I didn't actually start asking the hard questions. I just kept, pushing them off until it was when, I don't know if I can say the word on the movie, COVID happened. I don't know. Is that going to
yeah,
get you shut down?
yeah,
Okay.
sure. There was
Okay.
something happened in 2020.
Half of the church, 2020. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, everything just shut down, and I just was not okay with the church's response to this, and it just felt so wrong to me, and it just everything in me. I mean, we were going along with the Come Follow Me and reading, with the Come Follow Me, and at this point, I think Joseph Smith had just been chastised by the Lord in the DNC where we were reading, and then President Nelson
Yeah.
came out and said, "Be a good global citizen. Do your part. Everybody needs to get the thing." And so
Yeah.
I knew from me that wasn't for like my family. That was not what we were supposed to do, and I knew that, and I felt so strongly that he was going to come out and apologize. I thought he was going to say, "Okay, I'm wrong," because
Hmm.
like that just happened with Joseph Smith, and that's he had to apologize and everything,
Yeah.
and so I just thought, okay, well, he's going to apologize, he's going to take it back, and I just waited, and it didn't happen, and I was like, there is something so wrong. And I just felt, okay, I need to start asking questions. And now it just freed me up. Like, I just felt free all of a sudden to just ask all the questions that I've had sitting on my shelf. You know, we talk about the shelf. We all have a shelf in the LDS. We all have a shelf that has stuff on it. And so I just thought, okay, I'm gonna get to the bottom of all these things. I don't want them sitting on my shelf. I want to know. And I don't know why I didn't feel like I could ask before, you know, any of those things. I wanted to know if he was a true prophet. President Nelson was a true prophet. I wanted to know if Joseph Smith practiced polygamy. All of a sudden, I was like, I just want to know this. And my cousin had posted something on Facebook about prophet cannot lead you astray is false doctrine. And because everyone was saying, prophet cannot lead you astray, do everything he says, you know. And I was like, that doesn't sound right to me either. And then he quoted Joseph Smith quoting Ezekiel saying, I even have the quote. Do you want me to read it? Or
Sure.
It was okay. I have that because it was it was a turning point for me. It was the President Joseph Smith read the 14th chapter of Ezekiel, said, the Lord had declared the prophet that the people should each one stand for himself and depend on no man or men in that state of corruption of the Jewish church, that righteous persons could only deliver their own souls, applied it to the present state of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and said, if the people departed from the Lord, they must fall. And they were depending on the prophet, hence were darkened in their minds, in consequence of neglecting the duties devolving upon themselves, envious towards the innocent, while they afflict the virtuous with their shafts of envy. And that was
horribly inconvenient when Joseph Smith is saying inconvenient things like that.
Right. I
mean,
so I texted
that's
all my
counterculture,
family.
isn't it? That's
Right.
counterculture to LDS culture, isn't it? I mean, would you say
it really
questioning
seemed
is
that
not
way.
really? Yeah.
I mean, it's like at that point, I didn't think sharing the words of Joseph Smith was going to get me in trouble. Or
Yeah.
I thought Joseph Smith was the foundation, right, of our religion. So I just texted everybody in my family. I'm like, guys, look, you don't have to do this because you can pray for and ask for yourself. And if you know, here's the words of Joseph Smith, basically. And people stopped talking to me and they're like, you're wrong. And I was like, wait a minute. And then it was really hard. I was like, that was the first point where I felt like we had been studying up into that point together about like the signs of the times and all of these things. We were just on this journey of just learning and moving forward in the gospel. And then all of a sudden it was like brakes were put on it. And they were like, we can't study with you anymore. We can't listen to what you have to say anymore over that.
Is it something like this? They will say questioning is encouraged. We encourage you to ask questions and to think for yourself. You are allowed to question up to a certain point. And I'm guessing the invisible line that's drawn there is don't, whatever it is, even if it's Joseph Smith himself, even if it's the scriptures that you're quoting, if that's bringing into question what the church's current stance is on whatever, that's the no-no, would you say?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, I have so many stories that I can tell. I mean, my friends were, during this time, I mean, they were going to church. Well, they actually were very discouraged from going to church because they felt like they couldn't wear a mask. Like they did not believe in it. So they were not going to wear masks. So, we've kind of ended up in that same mindset too. I was just like, didn't want anything to do with any of the agenda, but where we were at that time in Oregon and Washington, if you were going to church and not wearing a mask, people were calling the police on you and you would be removed. And so it was very much, you have to do all of what we're saying or you're not following the prophet. And I have a friend who got up in sacrament meeting and said, they ended up not going for a while, but once it calmed down a little bit at the end there, he went and he bore his testimony, and he just said, I don't want to be a good global citizen. And he read a bunch of scriptures, and he said, I want to be a follower of Christ, and that's what he was just really trying to point out, that we should be following Christ. And he got disfellowshipped from that one thing, just his testimony in sacrament meeting. He got disfellowshipped. He wasn't able to make comments in Sunday school. He wasn't able to hold a calling anymore. And he then was being disciplined by the church, and they had to meet with him every month. And it was like he was a problem now, and they had to keep him at arm's length and not let him say anything. And it was not,
Wow.
I mean, so many of us were feeling this way. And so it was like, I don't know, it was shocking.
Yeah, I know the pandemic and response to pandemic was a major factor for a lot of people. That I realize for me, it's kind of a non-issue for me. I'm into personal liberty and everyone being informed and making the decision for themselves. But what I notice is that God uses various things to bring about a questioning in people's minds, and he'll use whatever it is he can use. Obviously, he used this as a very big part of awakening LDS to question their leadership. For me, a red flag is when you said, be a good global citizen, because that's kind of a frightening thing for me, for a Christian church to say, because are we about the ways of Christ and the ways of God, or are we going about the ways of the world? Because eventually these two they already did, but it's only going to get worse. These two are parting. These are two different paths, So eventually, to be a good global citizen, you're going to take the mark of the beast. So how far is the church going to go down this path, I think is
what I was seeing, that it was like, aren't we supposed to stand away from the world and be peculiar people and not follow the world? That was definitely something that was going on in my mind.
You're questioning the leadership at this point. You're questioning all the way up to the president, prophet of the church, in a lot of ways. Because he's leading this effort, right?
Yeah.
One of the questions I had for a couple of missionaries that came to my house is, I said, I'm not trying to beat you up or give you put you in a corner or something. I just have an honest question. And they're like, go ahead. And I just said, did your prophet predict and let you know ahead of time that the pandemic was coming and how to prepare for it? And they said, no. And it's for me, the scriptures are really plain. It says, surely the Lord will do nothing except that he reveals it to his prophets,
Right.
And I'm just always curious about that. And I wonder then, as you're looking at the present prophet of the church, you're not seeing someone, his policies seem to be based on what information he's getting from a world perspective on what needs to be done, which is not necessarily a terrible thing for an organization, or let's say a corporation or whatever. But if you're a faith-based organization and you're a prophet, supposedly, I guess what I would be looking for is, what was the word of the Lord to you? What did he say about this?
Exactly. That's something that was part of my journey, because we ended up being able to have the opportunity to live in President Eyring's ward for about almost 4 years. Okay. And I knew that I was there, like my husband and I just knew that we were there to learn something. We just knew and I thought, oh, we're in President Eyring's ward. It was just awesome. We get to be in one of their
prestigious.
And yes. And so people would ask us, like, is he even there? Does he even go to that? And he was there most of the time, and he would get up and bear his testimony and things. But one thing that I really remember from that time when we lived there that stood out to me was that he said that he has never seen Christ. And I was like, wait a minute. Because isn't that your job? Isn't that what you say that, that's your position, that you get to see him and you get to be taught by him, and then you come and tell all of us, that's kind of the idea that we all have, a lot of people have, that, they walk and talk with Christ and they get to see him and be taught by him and all this stuff. And so when he said he has never seen him, I was like, wait, like that just really took me back. It was,
yeah, it kind of unveils something, a bigger issue. I saw that in church history going all the way back to Joseph and the original elders of the church when they picked 12 apostles for the church. But what was really interesting is when they went and ordained them, you think, okay, all done. We've ordained them apostles. They've got authority or whatever. But what really stood out to me is Oliver Cowdery, right after the ordinations, prophesied to the 12. And he said, you are not yet apostles.
Yeah.
You must seek God to see his face, see God face to face, come face to face with Christ, and you must seek it with everything you have. And until you have that encounter with him, you are not truly an apostle. And I was like, wow. And the truth of it just flooded me. And then I looked at our own apostles in the church, and I'm thinking, and I started studying what apostles were, and it says they're in a special witness. And I'm like, okay, what does this mean? I started inquiring of the Lord. I started reading articles. Well, it turns out why they were special witnesses was because they had had a face-to-face encounter with the resurrected Christ, and therefore they could testify that they had literally seen him. Where is that idea gone in the modern age of the church? Now it's about whether you're a good corporate person, whether you make a lot of money, whether you have a prestigious title or whatever it is. It seems like influence, but
that's the pattern. That's, if you look at it, that's really what it is. And I didn't actually know that they were supposed, like what you mentioned just now. That's like something I came on later during my studies, and I was like, well, that just confirmed what I thought, that he was actually supposed to have been, having this communication with Christ directly.
Absolutely. So, the pandemic, the response from the church, that was a big thing. Our LDS, it was the church suddenly said it was going to be, we're going to have women in the priesthood. Everyone thought that our prophet was going to repent of that, and he never did. And so we always think at first you're just like, well, we're in the one true church. That's the problem. When you're in the one true church to the exclusion of all others, if something goes awry, then God obviously will have to fix this, right? And so for a while you're clinging onto it going, okay, well, certainly he's going to be chastised, or he'll repent, or he'll say he was wrong, or the Lord told him something, and yet that day never came, and then what? What do you do at that point when you're in the one true church, but it's not on the path you believe is right?
Right. And then I think God put me in different places in my life, we moved so many times. I was living in North Dakota, and I was in this homeschool group with a bunch of people that none of them were Mormon. They were like Catholic and Baptist, and I don't even know the other religions. But I was shocked because I didn't have that exposure really to other people in other religions until I was there, and I was associating closely with them, and I was like, they're better than us. Like, they were such good people. Mormons are, are all over the scale too, but they were so good. And I felt like I was raised to think that Mormons were the best people. You know what I mean?
Well,
we're the one true religion, the one true church.
Absolutely.
And so it was definitely eye-opening.
Yeah, it's a shocker. And I hate to say this, but even cults, that happens in cults where people are taught that they're the exclusive people, the only chosen people. And then over time, after you've been fed that lie for long enough, and you see, you're in with any organization or with a group of people, you see all the problems they have. And then, you suddenly go outside of that group and you meet with other people that supposedly are all wrong. They're all wrong. They don't
Yeah.
have authority. They're not really they're in a lower glory, whatever the language we use. But it can
Yeah.
be a shock to find out some of those people have a very strong relationship with the Lord. Some of them
Hmm.
a deeper relationship than people that are ministers in our own church. This is the experience I had.
Yeah. No,
It was a
I would
wake
agree
up
with
call.
that. Yeah. I would agree with that for sure. And so I was able to look back on that and think, when I'm going through this and, and you mentioned the one true church, I came across, and I feel like I have never read the Book of Mormon at this point. I'm like, I mean, do we really though? I don't know that a lot of people have studied, and I really didn't study the scriptures like I should have up to this
Yeah.
point, because I felt like the leaders tell us everything we need to know. And we go to our
True.
classes and we do everything. We do all the service and we do
Sure.
all the things. And I read that in First Nephi 14:10, I think it is, that there are only two churches. And 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 I was like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
what does this mean?
Yeah, and what does it mean? Well, and here's the thing: when you find spirit-led people, when you run into
Mm-hmm.
spirit-led people who are not in the church, and there's only two churches, and one of them is the church of the devil.
Yeah,
What do you do? What do you do? Because you know this person isn't in the church of the devil, right? I mean, they're
exactly.
not of the devil. They've got the Holy Spirit.
Exactly.
So what do you do with that?
Right. It was so confusing to me because I'm like, if we are the only true church and they're such good people, I remember sitting in a Relief Society lesson, and this was, by the time I was learning a lot, and just really, my eyes had been really open at this point, and it was like they were just saying how sorry they felt for everyone else, that like they were naming all these people that they knew because they weren't members of the church, but they were such good people, but they weren't members of the church. So they were
Yeah.
so sad about them. And I was thinking about that. Like, I don't think, it just was so hard to, I don't know, listen to that particular lesson. And it made me just really realize the truth of that, of First Nephi 14. There are only two churches. Two
Yeah,
churches.
you're gonna get into trouble when you actually read the Book of Mormon, and
Yes.
especially if you're inclined to be taught from the Lord and
Mm-hmm.
you read the Book of Mormon. That it seems like that is a touchstone for not just LDS, for all the RLDS and other restoration people, that when they really dig in their Book of Mormon, they start realizing something's not right. It seems to be a
Right.
common theme. And that is the book, the one and only record. There's no other record that the Lord gave us that He said, I'm bringing this forward to correct your stumbling and to fix all your doctrines and to take care of things. This will help you.
Right. I remember President Monson when he was like on his deathbed, and he was, the last few times that he would talk to us in general conference, and he would say, just read the Book of Mormon, just read the Book of Mormon. And I'm like, we always
Wow.
are told to read the Book of Mormon, and everybody reads the Book of Mormon, but like, what is he saying? And it actually, thinking back, I'm like, he was warning us. Like, he knows. I think he knew, and he was on his deathbed, and he was, in my opinion, trying to say, if you read the Book of Mormon, you'll understand what's going wrong in the church. Like, you'll get it. Um,
Yeah, and
so
that kind of spawned a movement. I mean, I'm not whether he didn't really start necessarily, but maybe that was one of the many seeds that got planted. But this doctrine of Christ, there's kind of a doctrine of Christ
yeah.
movement. There's many different movements in there, but I noticed there's a common theme among them all, and that is that reading the Book of Mormon, they find out that Jesus has this really simple and plain doctrine.
Yeah.
Was that something that really was that part of your journey? Kind of.
Yeah. Like, I found, I didn't actually understand, like I said, I hadn't studied the Book of Mormon like I should have. And so I decided that I was going to study the Book of Mormon and read it for the first time without any, like, I didn't read the subtitles. I didn't read, and I didn't want to read it. I didn't want to have anybody like telling me or interpreting it for me. I just pretended like I didn't know anything. And then I read it. And the doctrine of Christ, I found in Second Nephi. Second Nephi 31 was so powerful, and then Third Nephi 9 through 12. Specifically chapter 11, and speaking about anything more or less than this is not of me, and talking about the baptism of fire in the Holy Ghost, and then seeking to be taught by Christ Himself. And I was like, and anything more or less than that is not of Him. And I was thinking about the temple ordinances and how they're pushed down our throats. Like, you have to do this or you can't be saved. But in the Book of Mormon, it says, anything more or less than this is not of me. And I guess if you grow up in the church, what you would say to that your response would be, well, there's continuing revelation. That's what they say, is like they get continuing revelation. And so that's how they add to it. But then when you realize that this is actually Christ talking in the Book of Mormon, that He's telling us Himself that there is nothing more than that is of Him, then it just then you if you really realize that, then you then it's very, what's the word, not more than shocking, like debilitating. You're like, what? Like, it hit me with a ton of bricks.
I think Jesus, He must have known what He was doing right there. Of course He did, but I know he put a hammer at the end of what He said there. When he relates His doctrine, He just puts the hammer down, and I realized, like, what can survive this? Everything that could possibly shaken will be shaken. Anything. How do you survive that when He says, this is my doctrine, it's the only doctrine in me, and anyone who tries to add anything to this and call it my doctrine. And my goodness, we got a whole third book that's called Doctrine and Covenants, and claims to be His doctrine, and it's things that aren't in what do you do? That was a revolution, I guess, for me. I believe in ongoing revelation, absolutely. But we don't add to the doctrine of Christ, and I think that's where people are waking up and realizing this can't be.
Right. And it's awesome when you're on your own journey and you're like, okay, I'm going to just ask the Lord myself. I'm going to read the scriptures myself. And then you get your own answers, and then you're finding that other people are getting the exact same answers. It's like a confirmation that you're on the, it's like, I did that by myself and they did that by themselves, and we're in the same place. And it's a miracle.
Now we're in the mouth of two or three witnesses. This is scriptural, It's definitely a move of God. It's unbelievable to me just how many people are being moved by His Spirit independently. And the funny thing is, I'm doing this podcast, but I don't generally get people write me and say, I've never considered any of this before, but now I think I believe what you're saying.
Right.
No, it's people who said, the Lord had already been leading me to this. I had come to these conclusions, but I thought I was by myself. I was on my own. And then I hear someone voicing the very things that the Spirit's been showing me. So yeah, definitely it's a move of God. I can't take credit. You can't take credit. None of us can take credit. And there's a lot of people out there. I know you had seen a number of videos and other, people that are questioning various aspects of beliefs and things like that.
So I really, really liked Rob Fotheringham's videos, because to me, he was a very credible person, because he's working in the church as a historian. And then I watched an interview with him, and he said that he had asked the general authorities, like, can I share what I'm finding? Like, this is, I'm finding that Joseph Smith was not a polygamist. And he's like, that he got permission, basically, and they're like, yeah, just go ahead and do what you're doing. And he's like, okay, and so he basically set up these slideshows for his wife because he wanted to share with her, and then he's put them out so we could all benefit from that. But there's so much information, and I never knew growing up in the church that Joseph Smith taught against polygamy. I never knew that. They don't tell you that. It's not available.
Yeah.
The Joseph Smith papers were very eye-opening because you can go in and see for yourself. Anybody can just go in there and look at the documents and see for yourself. Like, I have the one couple pages where, you can see it just edited out, Joseph Smith saying that it's, polygamy is not okay. Marriage is between one man and one woman. And then it's crossed out and then except in this case, edited in,
Yeah.
So it's like, wait a minute.
Changing the revelations. That's
changing the word. Yes. And like Whitney Horning was one of the ones that I really, she did some videos and she wrote a book.
Okay.
The name of the book is A Faithful Telling of Joseph Smith. Yeah. So,
okay. Yeah.
And that one is really good. Also the exoneration of Emma, Joseph, and Hiram. I mean, I just could not get enough of material. I really wanted to know everything. And I feel bad for my kids. I'm like, sorry, kids, we are studying this today. And I'm just like, I'm going every day, all day long. I just want to study and find all the answers that I can and just anything, throw it at me. Like I was all of a sudden open to resources, and I wasn't looking at anti-Mormon stuff. I just wanted to look at truth, actual documents, actual people with their experience. Like Denver Snuffer's 10 Talks was really helpful for me. That was like, I think that was the turning point for me when I listened to all those. I was like, wow, like there was just, I had the conviction after that. I was like, okay, this is true. That's true. What he says in those 10 Talks. And so, I mean, there's just so many. The Joseph Smith, who killed Joseph Smith by the Griffins.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. Wow, that was.
Yeah.
I had an experience a lot of years ago. I'm older than some people probably think. It was a long time ago, but I was. I can't remember what the pretext of it was, but I remember that. I think it was when I was reading about the Gannington robbers in the Book of Mormon, and the Holy Spirit whispered something to me about that Joseph Smith was killed as a result of conspiracy. There was a conspiracy. And I remember the word conspiracy. That was what caused him to be murdered. And I thought he was just killed by a mob. And the Lord never said anything else. It was just for years. And I just had this conviction there was some sort of conspiracy. And I said, I think it has something to do with the church, but I don't know what. And they're like, well, I don't know how that could be. And when I saw that film, it really opened my eyes. And I was like, oh, okay, there's the answer. I mean, I would have never imagined. But it kind of makes sense. A lot of these people did the historian, did he get put out of the church?
I don't think so, but he has had to take his videos down, and I don't know why he did, but you can still watch them at Hemlock Knots, which is another great site that I didn't mention. It has just
awesome,
unbiased. Yeah, I love Hemlock Knots. So, I mean, there's just so many places to find truth, and the places that I'm talking about are not like bashing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're not Mormon hating, bashing, anti-Mormon
an anti-Mormon. Yeah, that's got a lot of garbage out there. But these are good people. They believe the gospel. They believe the restored gospel, that the fullness in the Book of Mormon and all that. But these are a lot of good sources.
Yeah, I guess you could say like truth seekers. Like that's really the label, I feel like, is like everyone that's really just wanting the truth.
So do you know very many people that have suffered, maybe been removed out of the church and as a result of asking questions or coming to certain conclusions?
Yes. So my cousin that I mentioned earlier, who posted about the prophet can't lead you astray, he also posted on Facebook about polygamy. not being from God. And he was a bishop, and he had been, follow the prophet, and he had felt like he felt like he needed to kind of correct that. So anyway, he wrote a blog, and he has some videos, and he's done a lot of, stuff like that. And so he's been excommunicated because of
Okay.
that. I think he was told to take his blog down or something, and he didn't, and so that's why he had, But the thing that I want to share about that is, like, we ended up moving up there next to their family, and we were in a different ward where the stake president was the one that excommunicated him, and he actually was my daughter's orthodontist. And he said, I was just asking him about it, and he said, yeah, your cousin, he's the salt of the earth. Their family is just so good, and we just love them. And I was like, okay. Like, he had nothing bad to say about him, and, like, only the best things. And but then I don't understand, why would you excommunicate somebody that is such a good person, or such a good, that loves Christ and is only trying to bring people to Christ? And that's the story that I'm seeing time and time again, is people that are just want the truth. They just want the truth, and they are being shunned because they're asking questions. And he couldn't tell me one reason, and I guess the reason that he gave him was because he was making the church look bad. So it's all about image. My son was kicked out of seminary because he raised the question that Joseph Smith wasn't a polygamist, and that was really hard on him. He was 16, and the whole class was, like, booing him, and the teacher included. It was just not a good. They were bullying him in class, and so he ended up stopped going there. Going back to my cousin, it's kind of affected me and my family too, because they kind of have this stigma, like, don't talk to them. They don't have the spirit anymore because you're excommunicated, and they are going on a dark path, and, everyone's kind of afraid of them. It's like a disease almost,
Mm-hmm.
And so our family is being associated with that, because we're kind of like, we're seeking truth, and we're on the same path. I mean, we are.
Yeah. The shunning, that is such that's an awful thing to go through. And then especially for one of your children to have to go through that, it's very hard. That there is a scripture where the Lord said, when you are persecuted or reviled or mocked and stuff, he says, rejoice, for so they treated the prophets, But that's a tough one. It took me a lot of years to learn how to begin to rejoice and be okay with that. Boy, for a young man, 16 years old, to go through that, and to have your peers, to laugh at you, or to, that's a tough one. I can't imagine as a mother what that's like. This concludes the first half of my interview with Trisha, and I hope you'll join us for the second half, which will drop next Friday. And until then, God bless.